Thank you, Mr. Kelly and Ms. Giffords.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jenkins, Ranking Member Rodney, and members of the committee for welcoming us here today. And I also want to thank Colonel Rodney for his service in the U.S. Marine Corps. Being a Navy guy for 25 years, I really appreciate U.S. Marines. And I also want to thank the folks in the overflow room, the other building. I know a lot of them wanted to be in the room here today, but Gabby and I certainly appreciate them coming out and their attendance today. And we're also honored to share our perspective on this important debate. We've been watching and reading about the work being done here in Washington, and we wanted to come today to join your fellow Washingtonians, our fellow Americans, in saying it's too dangerous to wait. Arizona and Washington State share a lot. A Western spirit, a way of life grounded in our families and communities, and an abiding appreciation for our traditions of hunting and gun ownership. But recently, we've come to share something more tragic, experiences with gun violence. In Tucson, Arizona, a madman shot my wife, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, through the head before proceeding to murder 6 and wound 12 others. Here in Washington, you've seen mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Federal Way in 2013, Cafe Racer in 2012, the Seattle Jewish Federation in 2009, and also the Lakewood police officer shooting in 2009. The people of Washington State have responded. 79% say they support expanding background checks on gun purchases. And 345,000 Washingtonians signed their name to Initiative 594, the expanded criminal background checks petition. But let's pause and remember who is not among the 79% of your constituents who want stronger gun laws, and who is not among the 345,000 petition signatories. There were 5,692 Washingtonians killed with a gun from 2001 to 2010. That's more people than the number of American soldiers killed in action in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2010 alone, 93 people were murdered with guns right here in Washington. They no longer have a voice. Too often, gun safety and gun rights are pitted against each other. But the truth is this: the thing we can do to promote responsible gun ownership and protect our Second Amendment rights is the very same thing that will do the most to reduce gun violence. And that's keeping guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them by providing background checks for most gun purchases. Take it from 2 gun owners. Gabby's a gun owner, and I'm a gun owner. We have our firearms for the same reasons that millions of Americans just like us have guns: to defend ourselves, to go hunting, target shooting, or just to collect and appreciate firearms for what they are, part of our national heritage. We believe wholly and completely in the Second Amendment, and that extends to all abiding Americans the right to own a firearm for whatever purpose they choose, for law-abiding Americans. We take that right very seriously, and we would never, ever give it up, just like Gabby wouldn't relinquish her gun, and I would never relinquish mine. But rights demand a responsibility, and this right should not extend to criminals. It should not extend to the dangerously mentally ill, and it should not extend to domestic abusers and those who perpetrate violence against women. When dangerous people get guns, we are all vulnerable. At the movies, at church, conducting our everyday business, and time after time at a school, on our campuses, in our children's classrooms. 2014 has just started and has been no different. Since celebrating the new year, America has seen a school shooting every other day. We are all vulnerable, just like Gabby and her constituents were at the Safeway in Tucson. Vulnerable, like your neighbors at Cafe Racer. Vulnerable, like 4 Lakewood police officers preparing for their shifts in a coffee shop. That's why passing Initiative 594 into law is so important. It will make your family safer by keeping guns out of the hands of criminals, the dangerously mentally ill, and domestic abusers. It's common sense. But the evidence makes the case for background checks as well. Residents of the 14 states that have expanded background checks beyond the federal standard are safer. Compared to the rest of the country, here are the statistics. Gun trafficking in these states is 48% lower. The rate at which women are killed with a gun by an intimate partner is 38% lower, while the rate at which they're killed by other means remains the same. And the gun suicide rate is 49% lower. Now, this law, like any other law, will not be perfect. Law enforcement will not be able to police every single transaction. Some criminals will still get guns. There will still be gun violence. But this law will allow responsible gun owners to make sure their guns don't end up in the hands of criminals. It will give law enforcement a critical tool to fight gun trafficking and gun violence. It will make it more difficult for criminals to get guns. And most importantly, it will save lives. Maybe the life of somebody you know, all without infringing on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Washingtonians. As a former resident of this great state, I feel I know a little bit about Washington and its people, and I think I understand why 79% of Washington state residents support expanded background checks. It's because, like Gabby and me, most Washington residents are pro-gun ownership, but they're also anti-gun violence. When I lived on Whidbey Island, I saw firsthand a proud history of sportsmanship and gun ownership. Now you all have a special chance to uphold this tradition of gun ownership and make your communities safer for your families at the same time. As a legislature and as the voting public, you have the opportunity to put aside the divisiveness of special interest politics and enact legislation that the vast majority of the state supports. So please support Initiative 594. I would now like to introduce the woman who reminds me each and every day to deny the acceptance of failure. I'm very lucky to call her my wife and partner, Gabby Giffords.
Thank you for inviting me here today. The last few years have been hard. I teach every day full of fault, and you can too. Stopping gun violence takes courage. The courage to do what's right, the courage of new ideas. I've seen great courage when my life was on the line. Now is the time to come together. Be responsible. Democrats, Republicans, everyone. We must never stop fighting. Fight, fight, fight. Be bold, be courageous. The nation is counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.